Quackity quack! We are backity back with our fourth episode of the Duck on a Rock podcast. Here at Duck on a Rock Sports, we have avoided one topic for the last couple months. Not hard to guess why. We are finally ready to discuss the team nearest and dearest to our hearts, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics did not repeat, so they did not, finish a goal that we had a year ago. But as we look towards this episode and next season, we're going to talk about everything from a hopeful Tatum and Brown era second championship to the second apron. So I'm joined by Matt Ouimet, my co-host, and Matt McDonough, my other co-host. Matt's welcome.
Thanks, Colin. And first of all, I just want to say I really appreciate the strength that both of you are demonstrating in talking about this very difficult topic tonight.
Well, I was going to say, Colin said near and dear to our hearts, and I remember some text messages in the springtime. I was like, I'm pretty sure they're not near and dear to all of our hearts, but two of the three at least.
Yeah, well, the two of you are definitely our Celtics experts, to put it lightly. So what we're going to do first is I just want to hear a recap of the 2024-2025 season, in your opinion. So can you walk us through, how you think the season went?
Yeah, so I think the thing with winning a championship is there is a little bit of a honeymoon period. There is a grace period. Obviously, the celebration as a fan continues much longer than that of a player. Last year going to the parade was amazing all summer long. Purchasing a lot of championship items and being able to kind of relive it both on NBA TV and just sort of waking up, realizing, your favorite team's the best team in the NBA. It's a great feeling. But
hanging a banner and off the window of your house.
Yeah, hanging a banner.
As some may have done.
Yeah, hanging a banner in your classroom. So all those things are great from a fan perspective. But for the player's point of view, which I am not going to pretend I know firsthand, I know the point of view from the bench. But the thing is, they have to get back into their season preparation, their routines. And you had a couple players or three players on the Olympic team, and then sort of the celebrations after, as well as the long playoff run. You're already behind all the other teams, but it did not seem that way at the start for the Celtics. They got off to a great start, hot start shooting, playing very well. They started 21-5, but really by mid-January, you could kind of see that it was either they were gassed, they just didn't have it, or maybe a little of just a hangover or fatigue getting to them, a little bit of a delayed one, because there was a 7-7 stretch after starting 21-5. January they went 10-6. So mid-January, they are sitting at 28-11, second in the East. But by then, as a fan, you could kind of see they get waxed at Toronto. They had a lot of blown leads late at home that they were showing signs of weakness that obviously, to skip ahead to spring, came out in the worst times possible in games 1 and 2 at home against the Knicks, which we'll get to. But they kind of were running on adrenaline at the beginning of the year. They hit that mid-January slump, and then they got it back together by spring. But I'm sure, as Cole's going to get to, the start of they looked back to what they were, March heading into April. They had a nice run to end the season, appeared to be able and ready to go for the repeat. But like I'm sure you're going to say, Cole, that Magic series, it looked off, and obviously it really looked off against the Knicks.
And I think even like January and even like the back 2/3 or third of the season when like you're in a lull, in previous years, not just the two of us, but I think most of the fan base would get into at least somewhat of a worry, and maybe at times we'd be in a panic. But when this group gets over the hump, you're less worried about them, not being able to turn it on when they need to, because the Tatum and Brown era, the 2022 finals loss, all the conference finals that they also got to and lost in, they finally get over the hump. They're in their prime, and you hope that, okay, this could at least be at least a 2 to 3 championship run. The big three era with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, they win it the first year, and then Garnett gets hurt. Obviously some similarities to Tatum, the year off a championship, but then they get back to the finals in 2010, and even meandering through 2011 with breaking up that starting five, trading Perk, and then 2012, the last ride for Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, losing to Miami because they won the championship their first year. You still believe that they could get another one. Tatum and Brown, it was, will they ever win one? And thank God they did. And as a fan, I'm sure the players, and it's a relief. It's a monkey off the back, pressure wise. But when you get to the playoffs, and even though you're not the one seed in the East, you're still the favorite to win the championship again and repeat. And the Orlando Magic are a 500 team. And even though they still won the series in 5 games, they at times, and this is just kind of, a subjective view, that they looked almost annoyed. The Magic played really tough defense, really stout defense, and at times it was almost Orlando was bringing it to them. Where if you're the defending champion, you should be bringing it to your opponent in the first round. But again, there's reasons for that, right? Brown, laboring through a knee problem. Porzingis had mystery illness from March till the end of his time in Boston. Even Drew Holiday, who was such a solid and steady player in the 2024 championship run, didn't look as solid and steady. And then Tatum, who's great, still sometimes in the playoffs has some games where he's not front and center. Leading the charge. So I thought that was a bad sign in the Orlando series. You get a little worried. And then, of course, the Celtics and Knicks were on a collision course this year. They had avoided each other in the last two conference finals, with the Knicks losing a series before. And you knew that they would kind of, match up this year. I told some Knick fan friends last summer that it's going to happen. And even when the ratings are low, and Adam Silver orchestrates a Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers, he's not going to not have Boston, New York, Celtics, Knicks for the first time in 12 years in the playoffs. So you knew it was coming. And what Matt brought up is the Celtics, the first 2 games played like you hoped they would. They swept the season series. Those were some fun wins. The ring night, banner night win at home to open the season, a fun win near the end of the season at Madison Square Garden, and they looked dominant against the Knicks the whole time, but the Knicks were due, and the Celtics let them off the hook those first 2 games. And even blowing one of them would still have been bad, but at least you give yourself a shot. When you blow both of them, 20-point leads at home, something that for a defending champion at home in the playoffs has really, how could that ever have been done? Then you put yourself against the wall.
And real quick, because what you mentioned too with the Orlando, and despite the injuries or whatever, it is a terrible look for the reigning champions to be the ones kind of complaining. It's almost like a reverse psychology move you'd see from an underdog, with nothing to lose, trying to get under the skin of the top dog, complaining to the refs, maybe being a little bit more vocal. But the Magic did a different strategy, which was playing aggressive, playing hard, being feisty, being unafraid, and not backing down. And then to see the Celtics again in a 5-game series that they won 4, but kind of instead of taking the punches and giving it back to them, kind of looking toward the refs at points, it just wasn't a great look. And the Magic, seeing what Indiana ended up doing, and with all the injuries in the East now, I know a lot of prognosticators are saying the Magic could be a surprise team, which probably wouldn't even be that much of a surprise team to make these finals when you see how the Pacers in a close series get swept by the Celtics in the 2024 Eastern Conference Finals, and they're a game and an injury away from winning the finals. This year, the Magic could definitely make a run, especially with their injuries this past year, limiting them from having a healthy lineup and rotate.
Yeah, and like in the Knicks series, you alluded to it, Matt. We love Tatum and Brown. I know we'll get to the offseason. I didn't want them to, it's sad to see Holiday and Porzingis go, but I want them to keep Brown and White. I still want them to keep Brown and White. And Tatum and Brown, the Knicks series was kind of a microcosm of the Tatum Brown era when it doesn't go the way Celtics fans hope it goes, where they blow leads at home. And then, obviously the Tatum injury, just destroys, part of next year at least. And just, you hope that he can be himself again. But they lost the Knicks series in the worst way possible. You lose to, a Boston-New York rivalry. You blow 2 leads at home. Your best player gets hurt in a season-ending injury for probably the next season. You give a little bit of hope, with the last home win of the year to cut it to 3 games to 2, and then you get embarrassed and just blown out completely in the Knicks' biggest win in a lifetime. So, and Knicks fans deserve to celebrate. They earned it. The team outcoached and outplayed the Celtics, but that's just a tough way to go out. Even as a fan, I feel like besides, losing to the Lakers in the finals, it's to lose to the Knicks is tough. And especially in all those different ways, it was Murphy's Law for the organization. But, thank God for 2024. But this is where when you have 7 different NBA champions in 7 years, they've all ran into something the next year. I feel like the Celtics got hit with every type of thing in those last 2 weeks. Even, you never give up on them, but even getting through Orlando, if they finish those 2 games at home against the Knicks, it still will be a long series, but you think they could at least keep it going.
So given the tragic injury and end to the season, what is the strategy for this offseason, and what are some of the moves the Celtics have made thus far? What do you think of those moves, and do you anticipate any additional moves in the future?
Yeah, so as of our recording time, right now, Al Horford hasn't figured out what he's doing yet. But, President Brad Stevens had a press conference yesterday in Boston and talked about how Horford's not likely to come back. He did kind of lament the personal side of having to trade Holiday and Porzingis, trading Drew Holiday to Portland and trading Porzingis to Atlanta. Their pieces they got back, Simons and Yang, they might move according to a lot of rumors. At least to see feelers out there. But it's sad. I thank Porzingis and Holiday for the championship. It's sad to see them go. It was sad to kind of see the end of their era in Boston. Holiday, even after losing in the second round, said he wanted to come back. They'll always be, Celtics champions. But I think even Horford, an even bigger fan favorite, I thought he might go out on top after last year's championship. But then you think about, well, Florida, he came back for the repeat. He might have wanted to bookend college and NBA careers with repeats and then go out that way. Didn't happen, but he may go to the team that denied him a championship in his first finals, Golden State, or possibly retire. The Lakers got 8, and so that's probably out the window. But then even another fan favorite, Luke Cornett, went to the Spurs for a lot of money. So, he might be wearing 7 to be, as he said in his introductory press conference, a third of Tim Duncan. But his salary is going to, be about 3 times what he's made in the NBA. So the
Well, and
Celtics
just
don't
just
have.
to interject, it is just crazy to me to think that a guy who averaged, I think, 6 points and 5 rebounds can command $40 million.
And that was a great
Yeah.
year for him. Like, he played well for the most part this year. Had a couple nice showings in the playoffs, a couple not so nice. But you're right, Matt. Like, it's that's, and we'll get to the cap and those sort of things. But it is crazy. It's almost like a backup quarterback, and obviously Victor Wembanyama. Unfortunately, like, blood clots is nothing to joke with, and you'd hope he'd be back healthy. But it's a similar thing to where you see some of these backup NFL quarterbacks making a lot of money. Now you have the reinforcements in the NBA making a healthy salary as well. Even though as we'll get to the cap, it's not always spread out as it could be.
Yeah, and even with today's basketball, an avid listener of our first 3 episodes of the podcast messaged us and said it's almost like a Mozgov contract, like, Cornette's deal. And I mean, that's the thing. The Celtics play Missoula ball. It's all about the threes. Well, if Kada, if Garza, who was picked up, are there big men? It's kind of, you still kind of need some traditional roles on the court. So I think too, the draft picks, Hugo Gonzalez, Amari Williams, it's not like anything is specific for next year, which is tough for the first time in a while. The Celtics aren't going to be anywhere near picked to win a championship, but and that hasn't happened in probably since 2021 really, and even before then, the Kyrie Irving era, and even the year of Kemba Walker. You had some chances there, and at least you were in the maybe top 2 or 3 Las Vegas odds in some of those seasons.
Yeah, and we'll see too. Like Matt was saying, in terms of what do you think for the future? I do think this is going to be an in-season process as well, where you'll have to see Tatum's progress with rehab, how the team starts, where they're at certain points of the season, how the East is shaping up. Like with Halliburton out, Lillard isn't a buck anymore, but that injury kind of curtailed some of Milwaukee's future plans.
And as of now, Lillard may be a Celtic. We don't know.
Yeah, and on the unhealthy list with Tatum for a while, but you'd hope they both would come back very strong when they're healthy. But yeah, that's the thing. Like Milwaukee obviously switched up plans, and again, they did get Miles Turner out of it, but they have to spread out the Lillard remaining salary. So with Halliburton out, which was terribly unfortunate, tough to watch, just as it was to see Tatum go down like that in writhing pain, and Lillard too. You have teams with question marks. The Cavs, the Knicks, those teams are back, as we said before. The Magic, the Pacers are scrappy and probably will play. Well, they play well without Halliburton, not necessarily on the brink of a championship, but I think they'll be able to at least be competitive without him. But the Celtics, it all depends on how it's looking early on, whether they're contending in a weak East or whether there's some teams taking the next step in the East, like a Detroit Pistons, for example, and then there's really no path forward for the playoffs. Maybe they do look to move more guys heading into the deadline. Sort of see it that way, because right now, even though there's still probably some dominoes to fall in the summer, with the way the Celtics are set up health wise and roster wise, it's it appears to be kind of a day-by-day evaluative process where they'll evaluate where the team's at certain points. And Stevens, I like him as a GM a lot more than I liked him as a coach, and he's made great moves. And I definitely have faith in him to kind of read the team. Even though I didn't always think he read the team well as a coach, he's read the team great as a GM. He's going to do great, I think, seeing kind of where they're at, and if there's a move to be made that sets him up for 2027 and contending for a championship, I'll definitely think he'll make it. And I do like he is sort of Belichickian in a cutthroat way as a GM, which is good. There doesn't appear, especially trading a guy like Marcus Smart. Not that Danny Ainge wasn't apt to make trades. Stevens seems a lot less emotional. Again, Danny Ainge doesn't seem emotional either, but he'll cut ties with guys. He cut ties with guys he coached, guys he grew with in the organization very quickly to improve the team. So you never know, winning a championship doesn't mean you're here forever. So I applaud him for last offseason, even though at the time I said they don't need to bring every single piece of the championship roster back. Teams do let players go. Like, to go back to Belichick, one thing Stevens didn't do that Belichick would do is if you helped them win a Super Bowl and you wanted to go in free agency and get paid, they weren't going to extend you the next year. But he was able to, despite having Porzingis for another year, extend him. They extended Holiday on big-time contracts, but that both ended up being tradable and movable. So they went for broke this year with the same roster, except for O'Shea Brissett and Svi Mihailuk. So they weren't missing guys from last year. They went for it all. It didn't work out. And then Stevens, I'm sure at the old ownership group / new ownership groups, hopes and maybe direction, he got them under the second apron by moving Porzingis and Holiday. And Holiday was great last year. He was an amazing presence. Played a lot better than Smart at bigger moments, helped them win a championship. No doubt about that. This year didn't seem to be as involved in the offense or smooth in the offense. He just, didn't look himself as much. And that's the long season last year, the lack of off season, a lot of minutes. So it's unfortunate. I know he wanted to finish his career there, but he's no longer here. And then Kristaps Porzingis was a really flash in the pan to get him to be able to play as much as he did 2 years ago, despite him being out for the majority of the playoffs, which people somehow don't factor in when they're talking about, the Celtics getting some easier paths last year with injuries while Porzingis was out all but a few games. And that game one finals, I'll always remember. He is not as good as Bill Walton. This isn't comparable to Bill Walton as a player, but he is kind of our generation's version of Bill Walton, where they trade Cedric Maxwell in '85 for Bill Walton, who Hall of Famer, one of the greatest college players of all time, despite injuries, had a great NBA career and could have been the greatest, one of the top NBA centers of all time, already is one of the top centers. But in '85-'86, Walton played a full season, helped them to one of the greatest teams of all time. Then the next year played only 10 games. Porzingis still managed to play much more than that, but he just, he unfortunately with that virus and then the nagging injuries, he just wasn't available. And at a certain point, if the guy's not going to be available, then that's who he is, and you can't really keep him on the roster with that salary.
And additionally, right, so moving Porzingis was essential to get under the second apron that you alluded to. And so just to briefly explain the concept of the apron. So essentially there's a salary cap that's designed to keep things as equal as possible, right? So that the teams with the most money just can't outspend smaller market teams. There's a salary cap. If you surpass the salary cap, you then would hit the first apron. And essentially, what the aprons are, they're thresholds where different restrictions are applied. So you hit the first apron, there are specific restrictions that are applied that would then make it more difficult for you to add players. Once you get past the first apron, you hit the second apron, in which additional restrictions are applied that make it very difficult for you to add additional players. And I believe there is a stipulation where if you remain in the second apron for 2 of 5 years, there are implications regarding your future draft picks. So essentially, it's very important for teams to stay beneath that second apron, that second threshold of penalties. And a lot of what the Celtics were doing this offseason, the retooling, was in order to get beneath that second apron, because without doing so, the Celtics had the largest payroll in the league, with a bill of more than $500 million combined payroll and luxury tax. So while I'm sure as diehard lifelong fans, it's very difficult to see such a drastic and quick retooling, it does seem like this is a necessary move to prepare for future years. But quickly, what I did want to ask, building on that is, how does it feel to go from what felt like really a perennial title contender to retooling and uncertainty really in a matter of weeks? How does that feel? And how do you, as like such diehard fans, adjust your expectations while also understanding that this is what's necessary to succeed moving forward?
Yeah, and so that's the thing that makes it's not, there's disappointment in it, the Tatum injury, because they were going to lose the series anyway. People would think they were going to come back if Tatum stayed healthy. Him going down, they were down by 7. They lost the game. That made it 9 points when he went down, and they were going to be down 3-1. But the fact that this became a necessary thing with the Tatum injury, it almost made it a little bit less emotional and oh my gosh, the championship team's being broken up, because it sort of ended there where the team wouldn't look the same next year with Tatum hurt anyway. And that's what made it a little easier of a pill to swallow, because you realize, okay, this is a new reality. But that the second apron thing, I do sort of wonder in a way, how is it good for fans? Like, are the Charlotte Hornets going to be, coming up, the ladder here the next couple years and being top in the East eventually, or the Pelicans and Kings going to always stay hovering around the bottom? Like, I see the theory, and I know CJ McCollum and the players, and one of the few things I agreed with Draymond Green about, criticizing accepting the CBA. But I do wonder how it really helps the league and this competitive advantage, although nicely written and spoken. It's not always, we'll see how it plays out with this league, but the NBA is built on dynasties, right? Like, it starts in the mid 40s. You have the Minneapolis Lakers. We'll acknowledge them, even though the Los Angeles Lakers as a franchise didn't acknowledge Minneapolis until a few years ago. Then obviously the Celtics winning 11 and 13. And then the NBA's weakest or lowest era was during the 70s, where you didn't really have a true dynasty. You had the Knicks winning a couple, the Celtics winning a couple. You had the Bucks, the Bullets, the Sonics, the Warriors, the Blazers sprinkled in there. So there wasn't that true 70s dynasty. And then you have the Lakers and Celtics carrying the 80s and bringing the NBA to new heights. And then, Michael Jordan as a springboard off that in the 90s. Then you have, the next generation of dynasties, where you have the Spurs, you have the I guess I'll acknowledge the Lakers again, but the Lakers, obviously, the Spurs, the Heat winning 3 titles over a span. You have the Warriors, you have the Cavs winning 1, making a ton. So you have a lot of those dynasties at the NBA's highest point carrying the popularity of the league. It's a league built on stars, and it's great. The last 7 champions are all different. Not all of them are new, but it's great. Toronto got a ring. Milwaukee got one for the first time in 50 years. But all 12 Oklahoma City Thunder fans are going to be in for a harsh reality when they realize that in a couple years, their team might not be able to keep together. And I saw the parade, and I'm sure they had to clean up all 3 soda cans or beer bottles that all 14 of the fans dropped there. But that city looks incredibly exciting. So I'm sure free agents are going to be lining up to sign there, but they're going to have to manage their money too, because they have a great.
Well, they just signed Holmgren to the extension today.
Yeah, and that's so like signing him will mean, and I know one of the players, I forget who
signing him will mean unlimited oxtails moving forward.
Yes, yeah, no, and more. Well, hopefully it means he has to.
He can afford a tailor,
and maybe do less commercials so we don't have to see him or hear him. That's what I want.
But Matt, like the thing is, the part of the response of Durant going to the Warriors was this. So, I mean, we are hypocrites. Everyone's a hypocrite, but it's almost like it's an imbalance, right? Because, in the era of the Heat getting 2 free agents, Durant going to the Warriors, then it's like, okay, well, you should be able to sign, your homegrown talent to larger contracts. But then you end up keeping like a full roster as the Celtics. Danny Ainge did a great job drafting Tatum and Brown. I didn't want Brown. Now I love him. Tatum, I was unsure of, and then got talked into him very quickly. So it's like, in some ways, the CBA is tough. Like, to your point, 7 different, even if we want to dissect the beauty of every city, 7 different cities have celebrated championships. Even though OKC seems to like be a cool spot, it haven't been there, but it doesn't look, as you said, that great. But at the same time, to Matt's point, it's tough, but you have to kind of rework. And this is a reset for the Celtics and Brad Stevens. The goal should be that you're the first, unless the Thunder repeat, which is very possible. You're the first franchise post-Warriors dynasty to get a second championship. So unfortunately, it didn't happen this year. If they had just lost to the Knicks and Tatum didn't get hurt, we would have, almost hopeful that, hey, no Olympics this year, no conference finals or finals run. The Celtics got more rest since May. That would have been the one blessing in disguise. So they'll be back next year and win it. That's tough to take. But if, Tatum and Brown are still in their 20s, you got to get at least one more with them. A year ago, we were saying at least 2 more, but get one more than the Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. And obviously that's not really a dynasty, but winning multiple now will be impressive, right? Like if the Thunder repeat, or if, we have another different champion next year, it's going to be, well, hey, no repeat again, maybe even a different team than the previous, 7 years.
Well, and I'm not like the Thunder. I just don't like Chet Holmgren. They deserved and were a worthy champion. And I just, the fans, that atmosphere, I can't watch that arena where, they probably get told to, is there a banner ad in the bathroom telling you to wash your hands after pissing in that arena? Because
most bathrooms at least tell employees.
Well, yeah, but I'm like they literally are telling people, put your shirt on, clap. Like it's the most contrived, unauthentic atmosphere, and to leave Seattle for that, I'm happy for those fans. Like they get one, but I hope they never get another one. But the Thunder franchises, they're going to you're getting punished for drafting well, developing well, and assembling teams. Like Sam Presti's a modern NBA GM. He knows what to do. And like with this new agreement, the team he built, there will be a day of reckoning where he's going to have to make tough decisions unless everyone signs for some sort of team-friendly contracts. I don't even know if that's really allowed with this. So,
and that's a tough thing too. Like, you have to sign these guys to the max. It's like, well, if you don't, what happens? Do they leave, or do they take team-friendly deals? But the Players Association wouldn't want that. Plus, I mean, these are billionaire owners. I would rather have the players who earn it make the most money. I don't want
you're
owners to keep.
You're punishing the owners who spend. You're punishing the billionaire owners who are actually spending by putting in the tax. And then the cheap ones get to just rake in this TV money and then sit on a pile of money like the owners of the MLB do in Pittsburgh and Cleveland. It's just punishing the owners who build a team as well as the GM and players. So this new second apron, the new CBA, the way the cap's affected with the luxury tax, it's gonna impact the teams that are smart, plan well, draft well, develop well. Teams like the Celtics, who seemingly, as Matt, I think we never really answered the question brought up, where you think the Celtics have a core here for the foreseeable future, and the foreseeable future meaning a few years together, it will have a crash landing and, be as the Celtics were broken up more quickly. There's not going to be, even though I said at the beginning as a fan, the honeymoon period or grace period, because of these luxury taxes, having the trickle down effect of not only the owners paying premium money on top of the already high salaries, but you're going to see the draft picks, the inability to sign other free agents to lesser deals and build a more complete, deep team, just like the Thunder and Pacers had a lot of depth. That's going to be tougher to do as the players, get to their payday. And the issue with like Colin was saying, it's great that the NBA is kind of a 50-50 split. And the last thing I'm advocating for is multi-billionaire owners and ownership groups getting more than that. Like a Luke Cornett getting life-changing money, like a Timofey Mozgov getting that money, like a LeBron, who we'll get to him in another podcast, getting paid $50 million a year, what he brings into the league. Like those are necessary things that need to happen in professional sports. It can't be, It's a Wonderful Life, Old Man Potter in his office hoarding money, with 30 ownership groups while, the players are judged for making millions when the owners are raking in billions. But there was one, I did like a lot from Celtics Life. CelticsLife.com is a blog, but they had a really good tweet that was really from a fan perspective that reads, "Sucks that if you have multiple homegrown stars on Supermax deals," which Supermax does involve the All-NBA, which, again, you're punishing players and the teams for doing well. You're punishing guys for making All-NBA. You're punishing the GM and ownership group for drafting a player and that player for doing well, developing with that organization, and reaching heights with that franchise, not just on the team level, but also on an individual basis, where they're all NBA. Yes, they're rewarded with money, but it might be now money that causes the contract to eventually be moved, or they're moved before they're rewarded with that money and then ineligible to sign the Supermax and then have to settle for, again, life-changing hundreds, millions of dollars, but still less than they could have gotten. So again, it reads, "Sucks that if you have multiple homegrown stars on Supermax deals, you may have to break them up to remain a contender for stupid CBA reasons. Well, if you get gifted a star like the Lakers were with Luka Doncic via trade, so that's only eligible for a max deal, so he's only eligible for like 360 million instead of 500, you have much more financial flexibility. Seems pretty ass backwards that teams that sign superstar free agents or trade for them, like the Luka example, have a competitive advantage over teams that do things the so-called right way and develop their draftees into stars." So, and that really shows that teams aren't able to it concludes teams aren't able to keep just two of their own draftees who developed into stars that they want to contend, then something is wrong with the system. And that's what it comes down to. You have two guys drafted number 3 overall, developed over this decade, going into their 10th and 9th year respectively, I believe. Hopefully Tatum logs time in the 9th year and is back fully healthy. But now they're punished where Brown is on in the rumor mill for trades. And how is that good for fans? How is that good for the league? What is the incentive to build a team? And yes, there will always be the teams looking to win it all, but it also gives owners an out to spend to, unlike the NBA, which doesn't have a floor or ceiling with a cap, to spend to the basement or floor of the cap, but not invest further and kind of stay in their toiling in their mediocrity and rake in these new television contracts and so on. And then it will also give less incentive for owners like the Celtics to go for it for multiple years. And instead, we have a 2-year window. Let's make the most of it because in the next 2 years, we're dropping back down. And then we're going to try to go back up. Right? So it's just the consistency won't be there. I think there will always be dynasties. You look at the NFL and their search for parity with the free agency model. And, the Patriots, as much as we enjoyed it, and that was where back then with their expectations and their realistic expectations year in and year out, it was like, high and low depending on how the season ended, but they bucked the trend of, okay, well, these free agency hard salary cap, there's not going to be dynasties. And then you saw what the Patriots did, and then you've seen what the Chiefs have been able to do. You've seen the Eagles winning a couple. You've seen teams still at the top. So I don't think we're going to have, a new champion every year, even though we have the last 7, but it's going to be difficult to have the same core team stay together. And I don't like, yes, it could be sold as, oh, this is good for the league. It's good for more cities and fan bases because there's no competitive advantage. But like Celtics, I've said, there is a competitive advantage. And the Lakers, we could save for another day because that's just ridiculous. The Mavericks, we could save for another day because they were rewarded. But, the Lakers get to luck out now because they were gifted a star and they don't have to worry about the aprons that the Celtics do and have to deal with. And they could keep their team moving forward in theory more together than the Celtics, who did it. They did it the right way, and they did it the way that you'd want a team to be built, and now they're paying for it literally and figuratively later.
And even like you bring up other sports, I mean, the NBA has, again, trying to show a little bit of the other side. The NBA has more parity now than the NHL. For years, I remember when we were in high school, college, and 20s, it was like, well, anyone can win in hockey. The state of Florida, because there's no state income tax, some fans are crying, a foul that the Lightning and Panthers win every year. And then the NFL is supposed to be the most parity. Everyone's going to watch every football game in the NFL no matter what, but it's, Brady Belichick, the Patriots, will never see anything like it again, and the Chiefs have a dynasty right after. And that came, the Patriots came after the Cowboys, which came after the 49ers, which came after the Steelers, etc. So it's like, in some ways, some of this is just what it is, right? And each sport kind of goes through its walls. Major League Baseball, the Yankees were the last team to repeat. And, you've had teams like the Red Sox, the Giants, the Astros win multiple, but it's that might be what the NBA, that might be like almost the model of the NBA. Maybe not. Again, in 2 years, we could be saying the Thunder three-peated, and then their dynasty might end, but they could do it. And I think too, the other thing, thinking about this, because obviously, Matto did a great job explaining it. I'm not financially smart. If you look at my Robinhood, I'm not financially smart. I think the squirrel in the backyard has more acorns in their account than I do. But the thing with the second apron is the draft picks, the trade exceptions, even just those long-term implications, right? If you stay, in that second apron for years, you think about, okay, the Lakers just sold, to a Mark Walter, the Dodgers owner. The Celtics just sold to Bill Chisholm. Steve Ballmer has owned the Clippers in like a, random, situation that they were able to attract free agents like and get three of them. I mean, that's different than, to Matt's point, draft picks, where if you keep them, develop them, unless you could pay those second aprons and not care about draft picks, not care about free agency for years, then hey, you get to keep most of your guys. But in a way, the Celtics are kind of in that limbo, right? They have Tatum and Brown, and now we just don't know how they can fill out the rest of the roster. So that's a tough thing. It was almost when the Celtics were announced that they were for sale, and Wick Rusbeck's father, unfortunately, Matt and I, if you followed us on Twitter for years, like we've been critical of the organization we love out of love, and Wick Rusbeck, I start to love him, and then he sells the team because his father would rather be paid than paid by parades, as his son said. And you think, maybe they're playing Abu Dhabi. They had a different tourism ads. Maybe the Celtics would get lucky with someone with oil money or Jeff Bezos, but it's still the CBA, to Matt's point, like still kind of prevents, whether it be keeping a homegrown star, whether it be making certain trades, having certain draft picks, which is just kind of, it's tough because I do get the hypocrisy of, us crying a foul when it's the Celtics. And, if this was a previous dynasty that we hated, we'd be saying, well, hey, it's got to be fair for everyone.
Yeah, and that is it. You make a good point because the NFL, like we aren't financial zens, but the NFL, it is, despite the cap. You look at how, and I'm sure if the Patriots made some of these maneuvers that some of these franchises have lately, there'd be full blown investigation. But you have like some quarterbacks. I know Mahomes has done it where, he's converting his part of his salary into guaranteed signing bonus, so therefore now it gives them cap space. So those little maneuvers in the NFL don't appear to be possible in the NBA. And if it is, I'd love to hear the correction, because that would be, I guess, a path forward with this. But it doesn't appear that there's any exception like that where Brady would always take less money, and then you have Mahomes now. Oh well, he's supposed to be slated for like, let's say 40 million, but then this one season they're going to guarantee 15 of it as a signing bonus, so then he has less against the cap. So those maneuvers help in the NFL. And then you have even baseball, as we were talking about, like there's revenue sharing. The smaller markets still get rewarded. And you have the ownership groups like the Miami Marlins and the Pirates who won't invest in the team. And they're just choosing not to and still getting a chunk of the change at the end of the day. But the Dodgers can invest as much as they want. And there is a haves and haves nots in that sense. But the NBA, it appears that the teams that will discriminate against are the teams that built the team, the roster, the depth. It won't be that, the team that got lucky trading for a star, they're going to now be able to build. You have the Mavericks making a terrible mistake and then, getting the top pick in the lottery. So it's just going to be a weird few years here. We'll have to see kind of how it takes place. And the other thing with Major League Baseball, you have a guy for 6 years of control making very modest money in a sport without a cap anyway. So, you have guys who could sign out to longer extensions, give them life-changing money more up front to maybe get rewarded with a hometown discount later. Where, the NBA, it's a lot more structured, where it's not as much of a free open market for a contract. There's, the slots of all NBA and this eligible. They're eligible for this extension, but not that extension. So it's going to be interesting. And the optimist view says it's going to be exciting to see the Celtics play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder next year and have to
Like
play.
Stevens even said that about Brown in the press conference, right? Like they haven't been doubted in a long time, and this almost feels like some of those Brad Stevens coached teams, Isaiah Thomas era, where the East, depending on the Knicks, Cavaliers, Detroit, like who knows? I mean, the Brown and White have won a championship if they stay healthy, like you said at the top, and just in general, like that's the thing. Stevens, next year it could be a team that similar to maybe a little bit like our childhood or these lulls of certain years where they're not going to be picked, but might make it fun. But the other thing too is in the future, the year after next, we are lamenting the financial decisions, but Stevens, hopefully, we got to trust him to make the right basketball decisions, and losing some of these guys, hopefully he replaces them with the right guys to rebuild.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's where we'll see how it is next year as a fan, just sort of the feeling around the team. If they are scrappy, not expected to, and they do overachieve, sort of like you said with Stevens' earlier teams without heralded players on the roster, him being very creative with schemes and even out of bounds plays and scheming for specific opponents before he bought into 3 points or bust, which Missoula is going to have to pivot. He's going to have to figure out something creative here, so it'll be on him. But it'll be fun if they are contending for a playoff spot, playing well above expectations, or if they're in a lull and it's just not happening. If they end up, maybe Adam Silver will reward them like he rewarded Dallas with, if they miss the playoffs, they have a 1% chance they maybe could get a top pick. I don't think a tank is in order. I think that's something that would have to be revisited down the line. But
yeah, we might have a future guest on, hopefully in the next month or two, that has already talked about, a certain BYU Bostonian. If the Celtics don't make the playoffs, if they can finally win the tank, unlike when they lost out on Tim Duncan, but then luckily traded back for Tatum.
Yeah, so we'll see, and that would be a great reward if they, play hard with the roster, and if they're on the outside looking in and they get rewarded for it, you take that, and hopefully they have a 2027 title contender again. But for now, it's kind of tabled title talk for sure. I know the Celtics social media team, they already posted today, I think it's 3 months till preseason games. And for those interested, the NBA Cup East Group B, the Celtics have the Pistons, the Magic, the Nets, and the Sixers in their group. So something that
the NBA Cup might be their best shot at a championship next year.
I'm actually going to go fully in on the NBA Cup because that is probably their best shot. And the NBA Cup is something I famously, for those still following me on Twitter, have been critical of until the Lakers won it, and then it became a thing I want the Celtics to achieve. And maybe this is a year that they finally win it, and it's third. Giannis has one, LeBron and the Lakers have one. So maybe the NBA, this group might be the Pistons and Magic will be tough.
If the Celtics win it, you have the Lakers and Celtics, and then even an MVP like Giannis winning it the first 3 years, it legitimizes it.
Yeah, which I agree. That should be the fix should be in. Legitimize the cup, give the Celtics one, maybe give Steph Curry next season's, and then then you could give way to the New Orleans Pelicans marching in. So, but we'll see. I mean, it's going to be. I mean, this is good to kind of talk because we have NFL's training camp at the end of the month. We have baseball's trade deadline coming up here. So this is kind of good to wrap up sort of the Celtics, even though there will be moves to be made or players that will leave in the coming days and weeks. But it's kind of good to put a little bit of a bow on Celtics talk until probably our next guest, and then future stuff we can maybe touch upon, some of the other sports either getting started or hitting its halfway mark. And if I ever take a cross-country flight with the layover in Oklahoma City, I look very much forward to seeing all the great sights in the city. But thank you to all our Duck on a Rock listeners for our 4th podcast. Thank you for listening, staying with us. We hope you continue to do so. And always thank you for being part of our flock.